So formatting your paper can be a little bit, tricky or a little bit difficult for a lot of people. What we're going to look at is, APA formatting, how to correctly format your paper using APA citation, and how to make it easy and fun. So join me. Welcome back. So in this video, we're going to look at how we do in-text citation. So the previous video, we spoke about the first page, how to format the first page. So now that we are beyond the first page, we're going to look at how do we avoid getting issues with plagiarism. So let's look at this example. So I pulled out a paragraph from a document, and it starts out by giving you, information. As workload increases, so does the expectation of management. So here this paper is referring to issues with management and a bunch of different things going on. The most important thing is, how do we make reference to something or information that we get from sources and not make it seem as if we are plagiarizing, okay? So you are allowed to use information, of course, because you're doing a research. However, you need to correctly cite the work that you're using. So for example, here we have the name of the authors. So this information that is going to come after the second sentence is written by Masters and Albright, 2002. So, for example, we say according to Masters and Albright, 2002, and then we continue to talk about what that information is. What is it that they studied or they said or they coined. Now, in order to do this correctly, you have many different options. So you can start out by giving the name of the author, or you can give the information and then put the name of the author at the end. So in this example, we're looking at how do we start out with the name of the person who wrote this information that we're going to give. So if you're starting out with the author's name or names of the authors, then you would put the year of that publication in parentheses after the name. So according to Masters and Albright, 2002, you would put only the year in parentheses. And also, you don't necessarily need to write the word and, like spell it out, A-N-D. You can always use the ampersand to substitute. So after you have given this information, you continue. And of course, we're not going to get into the grammatical and punctuation aspects of the paper itself, only as it relates to citation. That's a different video. If you want to look at punctuation and grammar, the videos are there. You can always look at the different grammatical structures that are in those specific videos. So let's move on. So another example here is when you have multiple authors. So whenever you have sources with 3 or more authors, then you would cite it using et al. So let's go into this a little bit. So you would start out by citing the first listed author. So let's say you have 4, 5, 6 different authors. You only need the name of the first one. So the first listed author, for example, Lipsky, comma, et al. So et al. Pretty much refers to all the other authors that are not listed. Now, after al, you need to put a period, then comma, and then the year. So if you eliminate the period before the comma, then you have an issue. Nothing can be eliminated. Everything here is required per APA standard. So unlike the first example here, where it says 2002, in parentheses by itself, you are allowed to put only the date in parentheses because you started out by using the name of the author. However, because you're doing something a little bit different here, you start out by giving the information, then making reference to the authors. You put both the author name and the year in parentheses. However, because you have multiple authors, more than 3 authors, then you are required to put the name of the first one listed and then et al., period, comma, and then the year, right? Now, let's go a little bit further. So here it says, on the other hand, Jones et al., and then we have the year again. Notice, even though we're talking about et al., we still do not include everything in this parenthesis because we're not writing this sentence the same way this one is written, because we're mentioning the name of the author and then given the information, we only put the date in parentheses like we did here in the first example, right? So the only difference between this example here, 2002 with Masters and Albright, versus this one is because you have et al. Okay? Now, because you have the parentheses right after, you do not need the comma after al. You only need the period. Now, let's go a little bit further. You are giving me a direct quote, meaning you're using the exact words verbatim as it was stated by the author. So you need to start that quote in quotation, like we have here, and then you need to end the quote in quotation. At the end of the quote, you also need to insert the specific page that this quote, this entire quote, was taken from, which is, in this case, page 99. So do not put the close quotation outside of the period. It needs to go before. It needs to go exactly where the quotation ends, because the quotation does not include page number. The quotation only includes exactly what the author said, which is this information to this point. Therefore, page number is only for your referencing, so you cannot put that within the quote because the author did not state that. So you would put the parentheses outside of the quotation marks, and then, of course, a full stop between the P and the numbers, whatever the numbers are that represent the pages where this information was taken from. So just to recap real quick, when the author name or names come first, you put the date in, or the year rather, for the publication in parentheses by itself. If you have multiple authors or 3 or more, then you use et al. And you always insert the comma right after the period and then the year. If you're using a direct quote, you need to put the quotation marks where the quote starts, where the quote ends, and then parenthesis at the end outside of the quotation to indicate the exact page numbers. I hope this was helpful, and see you in my next episode of APA Citation. And I'm pretty sure after this video, you'll definitely feel more comfortable writing better papers and understanding how to avoid plagiarism. See you then.